Welcome back to Vietnamese Vixens. Today's story comes from Eric, a 34-year-old software developer from Stockholm, Sweden. He thought he'd found something pure in the Vietnamese countryside, something real that existed outside the endless cycle of dating apps and career ambitions and Nordic efficiency. He thought he could share that purity with the modern world without it getting corrupted. He was wrong. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you've ever felt like bringing someone into your world changed them completely. Hit that like button and subscribe for more stories like this. Now, here's Eric's story, in his own words. I landed in Ho Chi Minh City on a Tuesday in March, with a backpack, a laptop, and about 6 months of savings. The plan was simple. The same plan every burned-out Western tech worker has. Travel Southeast Asia, work remotely, figure out what the hell I actually wanted from life. Stockholm had stopped making sense to me. The endless gray winters, the sterile efficiency of everything. The women I dated who scheduled our conversations like business meetings and split every bill to the exact krona. I'm not saying they were wrong, I'm saying I was tired. Tired of optimizing. Tired of performing. Tired of feeling like love was just another project to manage with the right productivity app. So I left. Bought a one-way ticket. Told myself I'd stay in Vietnam for a month, maybe 2, then move on to Thailand or Bali or wherever the digital nomad circuit took me. I did the Saigon thing for about 3 weeks. District 1, the backpacker hostels, the rooftop bars, the expats complaining about the heat while downing $2 beers. It was fine. It was exactly what I expected. And that was the problem. I'd flown 9,000 kilometers to find the same conversations I'd been having in Stockholm, just with cheaper drinks and more humidity. Then someone at a co-working space mentioned this village. About 2 hours outside the city, not really on any tourist map, but beautiful. Real Vietnam, they said. I'm usually skeptical of that phrase, real Vietnam, like there's some authentic version of a country that exists just for foreigners to discover. But I was restless, so I rented a motorbike and drove out there on a Saturday morning. The road got quieter as I left the city. The aggressive honking faded. The concrete gave way to green, rice fields stretched out on both sides, broken up by small houses and the occasional shop. I stopped at this tiny place for coffee. Just a few plastic stools on the side of the road, and the woman who served me smiled like I was the first foreigner she'd seen in months. Maybe I was. The coffee was strong, almost syrupy, mixed with condensed milk. I sat there for an hour, watching motorbikes pass, watching an old man tend to his buffalo in the field across the road, feeling my shoulders drop for the first time in years. I ended up staying. Found a room for rent above a small shop, maybe 30 square meters, basic as hell but clean. The family who owned the shop spoke zero English. I spoke zero Vietnamese. We communicated through gestures and Google Translate and a lot of laughing at my terrible pronunciation. Rent was 1.2 million dong a month. That's about 420 kronor. In Stockholm, you couldn't rent a closet for that. I fell into a routine. Mornings, I'd work on my laptop, doing the freelance coding projects that kept money coming in. Around 10, I'd walk to this little pho shop run by an older woman and her family. The pho cost 25,000 dong. Less than 10 kroner for a bowl that could feed me until dinner. I'd sit there, sweating in the heat, watching the village wake up around me. Kids in school uniforms, women carrying vegetables to market, men smoking cigarettes and playing cards under the shade of a tree. Nobody was in a hurry. Nobody was checking their phone every 30 seconds. It wasn't paradise. It was just life, happening at a pace my body could actually process. That's where I met her. Lynn. She worked mornings at her aunt's pho shop, the one I'd been going to. I'd seen her around, obviously. 26, maybe 27. Slim, with long black hair she kept tied back while she worked. She'd bring the bowls to tables, wipe down surfaces, help her aunt prep ingredients in the back. I probably stared too much those first few weeks. Not in a creepy way, I hope. More like I couldn't quite believe someone could move through the world with that kind of unself-conscious grace. She wasn't performing for anyone, wasn't checking her reflection, wasn't curating anything. She was just there, fully present in the simple act of working. One morning, she asked me something in Vietnamese. I had no idea what she said. I shrugged, did the universal gesture for, I don't understand. She laughed. Not at me exactly, just at the situation. Then she pointed at my empty bowl and made a gesture like more. I nodded. She brought me another bowl, and when one tried to pay again, she waved me off. On the house. I tried to thank her in Vietnamese, butchered the pronunciation completely. She laughed again. That laugh, light, unforced, like she found genuine joy in my incompetence. After that, she'd practice English with me sometimes during slow periods. Her English was basic, learned in school years ago, and mostly forgotten. My Vietnamese was non-existent. We'd sit at one of the tables, and she'd point at things, teach me words. Rice, water, hot, delicious. I'd write them down phonetically in my notebook, forget them immediately, have to ask again the next day. She never seemed annoyed. She'd just repeat them, slower, watching my mouth try to form the shapes of a language my Swedish tongue wasn't built for. We started taking walks after her shift ended, around noon when the sun was brutal. But before the afternoon heat became unbearable. She'd show me around the village, introduce me to people, laugh when I tried to have conversations that went nowhere because of the language barrier. Her family farmed rice, not much land, but enough. She'd work in the fields in the afternoons, come home covered in mud and sun, help her mother cook dinner. Sometimes she'd invite me to eat with them. We'd sit on the floor around a low table, sharing dishes family style, her little nephews staring at me like I was an alien that had landed in their living room. Her hands were rough. I remember noticing that. Calloused from work, nails cut short, no polish. In Stockholm, every woman I dated had perfect manicures. Monthly gel appointments, cuticle oil, hand cream. Lynn's hands told the story of her life. They'd harvested rice, cleaned dishes, carried heavy bags of vegetables from market. They were beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with aesthetics, and everything to do with honesty. I fell for her slowly, then all at once. It wasn't some movie moment. It was a Tuesday afternoon, maybe 6 weeks after we met. She'd finished work, changed out of the clothes she wore at the shop, and we were sitting by the small river that ran near the village. She was telling me something about her family in Vietnamese, speaking slowly so I could catch a few words here and there. The sun was setting, turning everything gold. A group of kids were swimming nearby, their laughter carrying across the water. And she just looked at me, mid-sentence, and smiled. Not the polite smile you give strangers, the real one. The one that reaches your eyes and means something. That's when I knew I was in trouble. Good trouble, but trouble. We became a couple, though we never really discussed it. It just happened. She'd stay later after her shifts. I'd help her family with small repairs around their house, projects that mostly involved me holding things while her father did the actual work. On Sundays, we'd ride to the market together on my rental motorbike, her arms wrapped around my waist, buying vegetables and fish and laughing when vendors gave us the foreigner price. And she'd argue them down in rapid Vietnamese I couldn't follow. Life was simple. Stupidly simple. My expenses were maybe 12,000 kroner a month, all in. Rent, food, the occasional beer, visa runs every few months. I was saving more money than I ever had in Stockholm while working less and living more. I'd wake up to roosters instead of alarms. I'd have real conversations, even in broken language, instead of scrolling through social media. I felt useful in a way that had nothing to do with my job title. When I fixed a broken fence for Lynn's family, I could see the immediate result. I could see her father's appreciation. In Stockholm, I wrote code that disappeared into some app that helped some companies sell more of something nobody needed. Her family treated me like a son. Her mother kept trying to fatten me up, piling more rice on my plate every meal. Her father taught me how to fix the motorbike when it broke down. Her nephews used me as a jungle gym. I belonged there in a way I'd never belonged anywhere, not even in the country where I was born. But there was this thing, this nagging thing I couldn't ignore. I'd watch Lynn work in the fields, bent over rice plants under a sun that had to be 40 degrees Celsius. I'd see her count out money at the market, carefully tracking every dong. I'd notice her wearing the same 3 outfits on rotation because that's all she had, and I'd feel this weight in my chest. Guilt, maybe. Privilege awareness. Here I was, this Swedish guy with a passport that let me live anywhere, with freelance income that was poverty wages in Stockholm but made me rich here, with opportunities handed to me just by accident of birth. And here she was, brilliant and kind and hardworking, trapped in a cycle of subsistence farming, because she happened to be born in a village 2 hours outside Saigon, instead of 2 hours outside Stockholm. I started thinking about what I could do, not in a savior complex way, at least I didn't think so at the time, just in a practical way. I had resources. I could help. Get her into English classes, maybe some kind of vocational training. Help her get a job at a hotel in the city, something with a real salary and opportunities for advancement. Give her the choices she'd never had. I brought it up carefully one evening. We were sitting outside her family's house, the sun going down, her mother cooking dinner inside. I said maybe she could come to Saigon for a few months, learn English properly, see what opportunities were out there. I'd support her, help her get set up. It wouldn't be permanent, just a chance to explore options beyond the village. She looked at me for a long time, then she asked, in her careful English, "You want me to change?" "No," I said, "not change, just grow. Have choices. See what else was possible." She was quiet. Then she said, "My family need me here." "I know," I said, "but it's just temporary. 3 months, maybe 6. She could send money back, probably more money than she made here. And she'd learn skills that would help her even if she came back to the village." Her family was hesitant when she told them. I could see it in her father's face, even though we couldn't have a real conversation. But I promised I'd take care of her. I meant it. I loved her. I wanted to give her the world, or at least a glimpse of what the world could offer beyond rice fields and faux shops and village life that hadn't changed in generations. She said yes. And I swear to God, in that moment, I thought I was doing the right thing. We found a place in District 7, Phu Mai Hung. 1 bedroom, modern building, pool downstairs, security guard, air conditioning that actually worked instead of just pushing hot air around. 22 million dong a month. That's about 7,700 kronor. In Stockholm terms, basically free. In village terms, more than her entire family made in 2 months. I kept the Stockholm perspective, told myself it was still a bargain. The first week, Lynn barely left the apartment. The elevator made her nauseous. The traffic outside terrified her. She'd stand at the window on the 8th floor, watching the streams of motorbikes below, and I could see her physically tense up. In the village, you could cross the road by just stepping into traffic and letting it flow around you. Here, crossing the street felt like a video game where one wrong move meant death. I tried to make it easy. Ordered grab cars instead of riding the motorbike. Took her to quieter restaurants where the menus had pictures. Introduced her to my expat friends slowly, in small groups. But I could see her shrinking. In the village, she'd been confident, competent, the one who knew everyone and everything. Here, she was lost. She'd clutch my arm whenever we went outside. She'd nod and smile when my friend spoke English, understanding maybe 1 word in 5. She seemed smaller somehow, like the city was too big, and she was trying to make herself invisible. The English classes started in week 3. A language center in District 1, not too expensive, about 4 million dong a month. 1,500 kronor. The classes were 3 times a week, 2 hours each. I'd drop her off, pick her up, asked her how it went. She'd shrug, say it was fine, but I could tell she was intimidated. Most of the other students were younger, from middle-class Saigon families, the kind of kids who'd grown up with English cartoons and international schools. Their baseline was her ceiling, but she kept going. I'll give her that. She'd study at the apartment, her notebook open on the coffee table, mouthing words to herself. I'd help when I could, but my teaching method was basically just repeating things until they stuck. Not exactly pedagogically sound. Still, I could see her improving. Week by week, she'd understand more, speak more, need me less to translate. That's when I got her the smartphone.iPhone, nothing crazy, maybe a year-old refurbished model, 12 million dong, 4,000 kronor. I justified it as practical. She needed Google Translate, needed to be able to navigate the city, needed to stay in touch with her family. All true. But there was something else too. Some part of me wanted her to have nice things. Wanted to prove that I could provide them. Wanted to erase the gap between her old life and this new one I was offering. She loved it. Spent the first week just exploring it, downloading apps, taking photos, figuring out Instagram. Her first post was a selfie in the apartment, light streaming through the window, caption in Vietnamese I had to translate. New life, new me. Something like that. I thought it was cute. Didn't realize it was a manifesto. The transformation started small. She asked for new clothes. Her village wardrobe was practical. Loose cotton, muted colors, nothing fancy. But here, she felt out of place. Everyone dressed different. Tighter jeans, fitted tops, brand names visible. I took her to the mall, told her to pick out whatever she wanted. She was hesitant at first, checking price tags, putting things back. I kept telling her it was fine, don't worry about the cost. We walked out with maybe 6 million dong worth of stuff. 2,000 kronor. A few pairs of jeans, some tops, a dress, nothing extravagant. But the way she looked at herself in the mirror back at the apartment, you'd think I'd bought her a wedding gown. She looked different. Not better exactly, just different. Then came the makeup. The hair salon, the shoes. Little purchases here and there, each one justified. She needed to look professional for job interviews. She needed to fit in at the language school. She needed to feel confident. I said yes every time. What was $100 here and there? I was still living cheaper than Stockholm. I was helping her adapt, helping her become the version of herself she'd never had the chance to be. That's what I told myself. Around month 2, she started making friends at the language school. Vietnamese girls, mostly from Saigon, daughters of shopkeepers and civil servants and small business owners. Middle class by Vietnamese standards, which meant they had motorbikes and smartphones and enough disposable income to meet for coffee without calculating if they could afford it. They adopted Lynn quickly. Maybe they liked having someone to mentor, someone less polished they could help shape. Maybe they were just nice. I don't know. Suddenly Lynn was busy. Coffee dates after class, study sessions that turned into dinner, shopping trips to the markets in District 1, coming home with bags from shops I'd never heard of. She'd show me what she bought, excited, talking about her new friends, Trin, who studied marketing, Huang, whose boyfriend had a good job at a bank, Mae, who was planning to study in Australia next year. I was happy for her. She was building a life here, making connections, becoming independent. That's what I wanted, right? But there was this thing happening, this shift I couldn't quite name. She started talking differently, not just her English improving, though that was part of it, the way she talked about things, about life. She'd come home from coffee and mention that Trin's apartment in District 2 had a better view, that Huang's boyfriend took her to this new Japanese restaurant in Tao Dien, that Mai got her nails done every 2 weeks at a salon that specialized in Korean styles. Casual observations, not demands. But I could hear what was underneath. Comparison, measurement. The realization that what I was providing, generous by village standards, was just baseline by city standards. The apartment that felt like a palace 2 months ago started getting described as so far from everything, which was technically true. District 7 was family-oriented, a bit suburban, not where the young expats and wealthy Vietnamese hung out. Dao Dien was where it was happening. District 2. The riverside apartments, the trendy cafes, the international restaurants, the expensive gyms. That's where her friends were. That's where she wanted to be. She started spending more time getting ready to go out. Outfits carefully chosen, makeup applied with YouTube tutorial precision, hairstyled. She'd take dozens of selfies before leaving, checking each one, deleting, retaking. The unself-conscious girl from the village who'd work in the fields and not think twice about dirt under her fingernails was gone. In her place was someone hyper-aware of how she looked, how she was perceived, how her life appeared in photographs. The food thing started bothering me more than it should have. In the village, we'd cook together. Simple meals, ingredients from the market, eaten sitting on the floor or at a plastic table. Here, she didn't want to cook. She wanted to go out. Try the new Vietnamese fusion place everyone was posting about. The Korean BBQ spot. The trendy pho restaurant that somehow charged 10 times what her aunt's shop charged. For basically the same thing, but with Edison bulbs and Instagram-friendly presentation. Each meal was 100,000, 200,000, sometimes 500,000 dong. 40 to 175 kronor, not crazy money, but it added up. More than that, it represented something, a rejection of simplicity in favor of performance. We weren't eating to nourish ourselves. We were eating to have something to post. I tried talking to her about it once. Gently, I thought, said maybe we could cook more at home, save some money, keep things simple. She looked at me like I'd suggested we move back to the Stone Age. Why you want to save money? She asked. You have money. You say you have money. Which was true, technically. I had savings. I had freelance income. But I was spending 30,000 kroner a month now. More than double what I'd budgeted, and my income hadn't changed. The math was sliding in the wrong direction. But more than the money, it was the implication. That my value was measured by my willingness to spend. That loving her meant funding this lifestyle. That keeping her happy meant never saying no. Month 4, she got a job. Front desk at a boutique hotel in District 1. Exactly what I'd hoped for. Professional environment, customer-facing, good for her English, real salary. 8 million dong a month. About 2,800 kronor. In the village, that would have been incredible money. Here, it barely covered her personal expenses. The coffee dates, the clothes, the taxis, the endless small purchases that accumulated like sediment. I was proud of her, genuinely. She'd adapted fast, learned the systems, become competent in a totally new environment, But I also noticed she'd started lying about her background. Not big lies. Omissions. When her coworkers asked where she was from, she'd say, near Saigon, instead of naming the village. When they asked about her family, she'd be vague. She never mentioned the rice fields, the faux shop, the fact that 6 months ago she was working for essentially no money in her aunt's business. She was editing her history, sanding down the rough edges, creating a version of herself that fit the story she wanted to tell. And she stopped going back to visit. I suggested it a few times. Weekend trip, see her family, they missed her. She'd make excuses. She was busy with work. She had plans with friends. She was tired. But I knew what it really was. She was embarrassed. Embarrassed to go back to the village now that she'd tasted the city. Embarrassed to be seen there, to have her new friends know that's where she came from. The village that had been her entire world 6 months ago was now something to hide. We started fighting. Not big blowout fights at first. Small tensions that escalated. She wanted to move to District 2. I said District 7 was fine. She said all her friends lived in Tao Dian, said it was closer to her work, said the commute was killing her. I pointed out District 2 rent started at 30 million dong, almost 10,500 kronor, more than what I was paying now. She said I could afford it, said I just didn't want to spend money on her, said if I really cared, I'd want her to be happy. She wanted a newer motorbike. The one I'd bought her was fine, 2 years old, ran perfectly. But her friend Trin's boyfriend had bought her a brand new Honda PCX. Sleek, modern, expensive. Lynn started calling her bike old, saying it was embarrassing, saying it didn't match her new life. I said her bike was fine. She stopped riding it. Started taking Grab everywhere, tripling her transportation costs, putting it all on my account. She wanted to go to this new gym in Tao Dian. 2 million dong a month. 700 kronor, not crazy money. But it was the principle. She had access to the gym in our apartment building, included in the rent. But that gym was for families and middle-aged people. The Tall Dian gym was where influencers went, where her friends went, where people who mattered went. I said no. She signed up anyway. I found out when I saw the charge on the credit card I'd given her for emergencies. That's when I realized the credit card was a mistake. I'd given it to her thinking emergencies, thinking practical expenses. But the definition of emergency had expanded to include anything she wanted in the moment. A new outfit because she had a work event, fancy coffee because she was tired, dinner at an expensive restaurant because everyone else was going. The charges added up. 500,000 here, 800,000 there, 2 million, 3 million. I'd check the statement and see money evaporating on things that would have been incomprehensible to Village Lynn. But Village Lynn was gone. The fights got worse. One night, month 5, we had a huge one. She'd come home after coffee with her friends, talking about this weekend trip they were planning to Dalat, cool mountain town, nice hotels, Instagram heaven. She wanted to go. I asked how much. She said maybe 4 million dong total. 1,500 kroner. I said that seemed excessive for a weekend. She said I was being cheap. I said I wasn't being cheap. I was being realistic about our budget. She said our budget was bullshit because it was my money anyway, my income, my decision. And there it was. The thing neither of us had said out loud. She'd stopped seeing herself as an equal partner. She'd started seeing herself as someone I was funding. And maybe she was right. Maybe that's exactly what our relationship had become. A transaction where I provided money and she provided. What? Companionship? The illusion of the village girl I'd fallen for. I said something cruel. Said she'd changed, said the city had ruined her, said I missed the person she used to be. She cried. Then she got angry. Said I wanted to keep her small, wanted her to stay the poor village girl so I could feel good about myself. Said I'd brought her here to change her, and now I was mad that she'd actually changed. Said I liked her better when she was dependent on me for everything. She wasn't completely wrong. Some ugly part of me did like being needed, did like being the one with resources, with knowledge, with the ability to open doors. Did like the power dynamic, where I was the savior and she was the saved. The city had equalized us in ways I hadn't anticipated. She had friends now. She had a job. She had options. She didn't need me the way she used to. And maybe I resented that. We slept in different parts of the apartment that night. Her on the couch, me in the bedroom. In the morning she apologized. I apologized. We said we'd work on it. But we both knew something had fundamentally broken. The next few weeks were tense. Polite but distant. We'd have conversations that felt like negotiations. She'd ask for something. I'd say yes or no, based on complicated calculations about fairness and precedent and what I could afford emotionally as much as financially. She'd accept my answer with this look that made clear she was cataloging every no, every hesitation, every moment where I chose money over her happiness. Her social media was full of photos now, her in trendy cafes, her at fancy restaurants, her with her friends, all of them dressed up, all of them performing this aspirational lifestyle. The captions were in Vietnamese, but I could guess the sentiment. Living my best life. Blessed, grateful. The same hollow phrases people everywhere use to convince themselves and others that they're happy. I'd look at those photos and try to find the girl I fell for. The one with rough hands and easy laughter. The one who'd sit by the river and talk slowly so I could understand. The one who'd bring me extra pho and waive off payment. The one who'd belong to herself instead of belonging to an image. I couldn't find her. She was gone. Or maybe she'd never existed. Maybe I'd just projected my own fantasy onto her, seen what I wanted to see, created a character that fit my narrative about escaping Western materialism and finding authentic connection. Maybe Village Lynn had been just as hungry for this life, just as eager to measure herself against others, just as vulnerable to the seduction of more. She'd just never had the opportunity before. That's the thought that kept me up at night, that I hadn't changed her. I'd just revealed her, given her the resources to become who she'd always wanted to be. And the person she wanted to be had nothing to do with the person I'd fallen in love with. The breaking point came in month 6. She came home from coffee with her friends, that specific kind of excited energy that I'd learned meant she wanted something expensive. They were planning a trip to Thailand, Phuket, 5 days. Beach clubs, luxury resort, the whole Instagram paradise package. All her friends were going. She had to go. She deserved a real vacation after working so hard at the hotel. I asked how much. She was vague at first. Then I pressed. Flights, hotel, food, activities, the whole thing. She estimated maybe 15 million dong, maybe a bit more. I did the math in my head. 15 million dong. About 5,200 kronor. For 5 days. More than a month's rent. More than she'd earned in 3 months back in the village. I said it seemed like a lot. She said everyone was going. I said that didn't change the cost. She said I could afford it. And there it was again, that phrase. You can afford it. Like my bank account was infinite. Like money I'd saved for years working jobs I hated was just there, waiting to fund her vacation with friends I'd barely met. I said no, not aggressively. Just no, I don't think we can swing that right now. Expenses have been high, maybe we should save a bit. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Asked if I was serious. I said yes, I'm serious. 15,000 kroner for a party vacation is not reasonable. She said it wasn't about the money, it was about me not wanting her to be happy. I said that wasn't fair. She said if I really loved her, I'd want her to experience life, to have memories with her friends, to feel like she mattered. The fight escalated fast. Voices raised. Things said we couldn't unsay. She accused me of being controlling, of treating her like a child, of keeping her financially dependent so I could tell her what to do. I said she had no concept of money, no understanding that 35,000 kroner a month in expenses meant I was barely saving anything anymore, that this wasn't sustainable. She said maybe she should just go back to the village then, go back to being poor and simple and exactly what I wanted her to be. I said something I regret, said I did prefer her before. Preferred when she was grateful instead of entitled. Preferred when she was content with simple things instead of constantly wanting more. Preferred the version of her that existed before the city taught her to measure happiness by price tags and Instagram likes. She cried. The kind of crying that comes from deep hurt, not manipulation. Said I'd brought her here promising her opportunities, promising her a better life, and now I was punishing her for actually wanting that life. Said I'd never wanted her to be an equal. I'd wanted a project, someone to save, someone to feel superior to. Someone who'd stay frozen in village poverty so I could feel good about my generosity. She wasn't completely wrong. That's what made it hurt. Some part of me had liked the power dynamic, had liked being the one who knew better, who had resources, who could open doors. I'd told myself I was helping her grow. But maybe what I really wanted was for her to grow in the exact specific ways I'd imagined. To be improved, but not changed. To want better things, but not too much better. To be grateful for what I gave without wanting what I didn't offer. We went to bed angry. Separate spaces in the apartment again, the physical distance representing everything else that had grown between us. In the morning, she was cold. Polite, but cold. Said she was going to Thailand. She'd figure out the money herself. She didn't need me for everything. I found out later she borrowed it. 3 million from Trin, 2 million from Huang. Promised she'd pay them back from her salary, which meant it would take her months. Meant she'd be financially obligated to her friends in a way that shifted those relationships too. But she went. Booked the ticket that day out of spite or determination or some combination of both. The 5 days she was gone were strange. The apartment felt huge and empty. I worked, I went to the gym, I met up with some expat friends for drinks. Everyone asked where Lynn was. I said she was on a trip with friends. They nodded like this was normal, like relationships were supposed to involve one person funding the other person's vacation without them. Maybe it was normal. Maybe I was the weird one for thinking partners should operate as a team instead of as a sponsor and sponsored. She posted constantly from Thailand. Instagram stories every few hours. The resort pool, the beach clubs, cocktails with umbrellas. Her and her friends in bikinis, sun-kissed and laughing. Group shots where everyone looked impossibly happy. Sunset photos with captions in Vietnamese. I didn't bother translating anymore. The engagement was insane. Hundreds of likes. Comments from people I'd never heard of. Men mostly, leaving fire emojis and compliments in Vietnamese and English. She replied to some of them. Not flirty exactly, but not discouraging either. Just enough to keep the attention flowing. I felt sick watching it. Not jealous, exactly. More like I was watching someone I used to know perform a version of themselves for an audience that had no idea who they really were. Or maybe that was the real her. Maybe Village Lynn had been the performance, the role she'd played because it was the only role available. And this was who she'd wanted to be all along. A girl on vacation in Thailand, looking beautiful, living a life that appeared effortless and glamorous and completely disconnected from rice fields and faux shops and the kind of poverty where you count dong notes at the market. She came back different. I picked her up from the airport and knew immediately something had shifted. She was tan, her hair lighter from the sun, wearing a new dress I hadn't seen before. She kissed me hello, but it felt performative. Like she was going through motions her body remembered, but her heart had moved on from. The next 2 weeks were awful. She was physically present, but mentally elsewhere. She'd space out during conversations. She'd check her phone constantly, smiling at messages I wasn't privy to. She'd talk about Thailand with this wistful tone, like she'd visited heaven and been forced to return to Earth. Her friends were already planning the next trip. Maybe Da Nang this time. Maybe back to Phuket. Maybe Vietnam wasn't enough anymore. Maybe she'd outgrown it. We had the conversation on a Tuesday night. She'd been quiet all day. I asked what was wrong. She said she'd been thinking. Those words, I've been thinking, that never precede anything good. She said she needed space. Said she needed to figure out who she was, what she wanted, where she was going. Said maybe we'd moved too fast, changed too much, too quickly. Said maybe we wanted different things. I asked if there was someone else. She said no. Then she paused and said, not exactly. She'd met some people in Thailand, made connections. One guy, Taiwanese, owned a business in Saigon, had a place in Phuket he visited regularly. They'd talked a lot. He'd given her his number. Nothing had happened, she insisted. But he represented something. Options. A different kind of life. Someone who wouldn't hesitate to fund trips to Thailand because that's just what you did when you liked someone. I should have been angry. Instead, I just felt tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of being the obstacle between her and the life she wanted. Tired of feeling like a sponsor instead of a partner. I asked what she wanted to do. She said maybe she should move out, stay with Trin for a while, figure things out. We could still see each other, still talk, but she needed space to breathe. We both knew what that meant. Space to breathe was space to exit. Space to meet the Taiwanese guy for coffee, then dinner, then whatever came next. Space to transition from the Swedish software developer who'd given her the city to the businessman who could give her the lifestyle. She moved out the following week, packed her stuff, which had somehow accumulated to fill 3 suitcases in 6 months. The clothes, the shoes, the makeup, the accessories, all the physical markers of her transformation. She took the iPhone, left the motorbike keys on the counter, said she didn't need it anymore. Her new life would involve grab cars, and eventually, probably, a boyfriend with a Mercedes. I heard from mutual friends that she moved to Tao Dian, not Trin's place, the Taiwanese guy's place. They were dating officially within 2 weeks of our breakup. Maybe they'd been dating before, and she'd just been smart enough not to overlap, to keep her exits clean. Or maybe it happened fast, that thing where someone new and shiny makes you forget what you had with someone old and complicated. The friends told me more than I wanted to know. He was 42, owned a manufacturing company, offices in Taipei and Saigon, drove a Mercedes S-Class, had a penthouse apartment in Thao Dien with a view of the river, took her to expensive restaurants, bought her designer bags, treated relationships like business deals where generosity equaled affection. Exactly the kind of guy I used to criticize back in Stockholm. The kind who saw women as status symbols, relationships as transactions, love as something you could purchase with the right combination of gifts and lifestyle access. But maybe he made her happy. Or maybe he made her feel like she'd made it, which was close enough to happiness to pass. Maybe she'd look back on her time with me as a stepping stone. The Swedish guy who'd gotten her out of the village and into the city prepared her for the real thing. The guy who could actually deliver the lifestyle she wanted, without hesitation, without budget conversations, without the guilt trips about sustainability and living within means. I stayed in Saigon another 2 months, kept the apartment in Phu My Hung, even though it felt cavernous now, kept working my freelance projects, kept meeting friends for drinks. But the city had lost its appeal. Every coffee shop reminded me of her. Every motorbike that passed could have been her. I'd see couples and wonder if they were real or performing, if they'd last, or if one of them was just waiting for someone with more money to come along. I thought about going back to the village, apologizing to her family, explaining what happened. But what would I say? Sorry I took your daughter to the city and turned her into someone you wouldn't recognize? Sorry I exposed her to a lifestyle that made village life seem inadequate? Sorry I thought I could help when really I just disrupted the ecosystem she'd been perfectly adapted to? I didn't go, couldn't face them. Couldn't face the rice fields, and the faux shop, and all the physical reminders of the version of Lynn that might never have been real to begin with. Month 8 since I'd landed in Vietnam, I booked a flight back to Stockholm. One way, 15,000 kronor. I barely had any more after 6 months of hemorrhaging money on an experiment in saving someone who didn't want to be saved, or who wanted to be saved by someone with deeper pockets, hard to say which. My last night in Saigon, I did something stupid. Rented a motorbike and rode toward the village. Not all the way. That would have been pathetic. But close enough to smell the rice fields, to see the lights of small shops closing for the night, to remember what it felt like to be happy with less, to remember sitting by the river with a girl who laughed at my terrible Vietnamese, to remember believing that simplicity was enough, that love could exist outside the machinery of capitalism and consumption and constant comparison. I sat on the side of the road for an hour, watched motorbikes pass, watched the sun set over the fields, thought about texting her. Didn't. What would I say? I miss who you used to be. I'm sorry I ruined you. I hope you're happy with your Taiwanese businessman and your designer bags and your penthouse in Tao Dien. None of it would change anything. She'd made her choice. Or maybe the city had made it for her. Or maybe she'd always been headed there, and I was just the vehicle that got her halfway. I rode back to Saigon, dropped off the motorbike, went back to the empty apartment and finished packing. Didn't sleep much. Just lay there thinking about all the ways I'd gotten it wrong. Thinking I could share what I'd found without it being corrupted. Thinking love was enough. Thinking she'd want the same things I wanted. Thinking the village girl was the real her instead of just one version. The only version available until better options appeared. The flight left at 6 a.m. I got to the airport at 3, checked in, sat in the departures hall drinking terrible coffee, watched other travelers, wondered about their stories. The couple arguing quietly in Vietnamese near the gate. The solo backpacker with the oversized pack. The businessman in the suit checking his phone every 30 seconds. Everyone going somewhere. Everyone leaving something behind. Stockholm, when I landed, was exactly as I'd left it. Gray sky, efficient infrastructure, everything working exactly as designed. I went back to my apartment, smaller than I remembered. Back to my software job, which rehired me without much fuss. Back to the dating apps full of Swedish women with good jobs and clear boundaries, and expectations around emotional labor and bill splitting. It was fine. It was what I knew. It was familiar in a way that felt safe and suffocating simultaneously. But sometimes, usually late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd think about her. Not the Instagram version posting from beach clubs in Thailand. Not the Dao Dien version with designer bags and a Mercedes-driving boyfriend. The village version. The girl with rough hands who'd bring me extra pho. Who'd teach me Vietnamese words slowly, patiently. Who'd wrap her arms around my waist on the motorbike and laugh when I took corners too fast. Who'd sit by the river at sunset and smile the real smile. The one that reached her eyes and meant something. I'd wonder if she ever existed, if any of it was real, or if I'd just projected my own fantasy onto a girl who was always going to want more the moment more became available. If I'd fallen in love with an idea instead of a person. If the village constrained her into a shape I found appealing, and the city just revealed her true form. I'd wonder if she thought about me sometimes. If she remembered the village, if she missed any of it, or if she'd successfully erased that chapter, moved on completely, become the person she'd always wanted to be without looking back. I'd wonder if she was happy, if the Taiwanese businessman made her laugh the way I used to, if the penthouse felt like home, if the designer bags filled whatever hole she'd been trying to fill. Mostly I'd wonder what I'd learned, if there was some lesson buried in the wreckage of us, something about class and culture and the impossibility of bridging certain gaps, something about how poverty can look like purity when you're viewing it from privilege, something about how people will always want more when more is suddenly possible. Something about how you can't save anyone who doesn't want to be saved, and even if they do, saved might look nothing like what you imagined. But I don't know if I learned anything, not really. Just that the world is more complicated than I wanted it to be. That love isn't enough. That good intentions pave roads to everywhere. That the girl by the river with rough hands and easy laughter might have been real, or might have been a performance, or might have been both simultaneously, and there's no way to know which, because the moment I entered her life, I changed the equation. Changed her, or revealed her, or gave her the resources to become someone new, and now she's someone else's problem, someone else's project, someone else's idea of who she could be. And I'm back in Stockholm, back to gray skies and efficient systems and relationships that feel more like contracts than connections. Back to the life I left. Back to the person I was before I thought I could find something real in a Vietnamese village. Sometimes I still smell pho and remember. Sometimes I see couples on motorbikes and travel videos and feel something twist in my chest. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd left her there, never offered the city, never tried to give her more. Would she have been happy? Would I? Would we still be together, eating breakfast at her aunt's shop, riding to the market on Sundays, living that simple life I'd found and then destroyed by thinking I could share it? I'll never know. That version of us doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it never did. Maybe it was always just a story I told myself about who I wanted to be. The guy who found authenticity, who escaped the machine, who loved someone for who they really were. But people aren't who they really are. They're who they're able to be given the circumstances. Change the circumstances, and you change the person. I changed the circumstances. She changed. And I learned, too late, that you can't hold water in your hands, no matter how carefully you cup them. It always slips through. Always leaves, always becomes something else. That's the lesson, I guess, if there is one. You can't keep things small and pure and simple once you've shown them how big and complicated and possible the world is. You can't freeze people in the version you fell in love with. You can't save them without changing them. And sometimes the person they become, given the chance, is someone you don't recognize anymore, someone you never really knew at all.